All right, hi everyone, welcome back. So I think in this video I'm going to do what I'm calling a back to basics wrap. I have some of us who are new or newer to wire wrapping, or newer to maybe even just working with square wire. So I'm going to do a basic, what I call a basic 101 wrap. It's a get back to basics. How do we, produce a nice, simple wrap using a traditional bezel frame to capture a teardrop shape or almond shape cabochon. And you could use round as well or even oval, but teardrop is a nice one to start with because it goes up, slopes up to a point, so you don't have to fiddle too much at the top. But we'll do other shapes as we go. My cabochon is about just a smidge over 1 inch, not quite 1 1/4, and about a 1/2 inch wide. I'm using 3 pieces of 18 gauge square soft wire, and they're all going to be about 10 inches long for this this size stone. You could go with 12 inches if you want to. I have to trim my wires a little bit. Yep, you could go with 12 inches. No, let's go with 12 inches. So my wires are going to be 12 inches long. That'll give us some room just in case your cab is a little bit bigger. And so to straighten these wires, even though they look fairly straight, when you pull them off the spool, they get some little warps and bumps sometimes in them. So I'm going to show us how to straighten wire. I'm going to take some metal pliers, and these are flats, metal flat pliers. I'm going to hold my square wire at its end, and I'm going to give it a nice firm grip. I'm going to take my nylon jaw, and with both pliers pointed forward, because it's square wire, so we got to do both sides, all 4 sides. So with both plier heads pointed forward, I'm going to just, with a handshake grip, squeeze and slide my nylon jaw down the wire a couple of times. And that gets the top and the bottom of my square wire straight. Then I'm going to turn my metal plier 90-degree upward, and I'm going to keep my nylon jaw pointed forward so that I can straighten the other 2 sides of this square wire. And I'm just going to run my plier down these 2 sides a couple of times. And then I'll just take my finger and gently counteract. There's a soft warp or arc, in the wire. You can take your finger and just do kind of a soft, real soft counter bend. That'll get it nice and straight for you. So do all 3 of your wires. I've already pre-done my other 2 for time in this video. And then now, when we hold all 3 wires together, they should lay, flat and side by side like this, nice and square, all the way down. If you have a little crunchy end like this that wants to give you trouble, don't worry about it. Snip it off. Snip it off where it's clean, right there. Don't fight that. Okay, so I'm going to show you also my method to keep these wires together while I work with them before I actually band them. I know a lot of videos show people just working with the wires loose, and you can do that, but sometimes it's difficult to hold on to them all together and keep them straight. So I just use a little bit of painter's tape. I come down to the end of my wires, make sure that they're butt up against each other, and just jiggle them until they lay side by side. You're going to lay the tape on them about 1 inch in and just lay it flat like that, and then flip the butt of it up and snuggle it onto your wires. Your wires should stay side by side and not buckle into each other. So they don't cross, I'm just going to keep my fingers on them and walk them down to the other end. And I'm going to put another piece of tape right there. I'm going to press the tape on the same as I did the other side. Okay. I want to make sure my flaps are both going the same direction. So I'm going to flip the bottom of the tape up, just like I did the other side. And that way both of my tapes are pointing in the same direction so they I don't crash into them later. Okay, so now I'll just find the approximate middle of my wire. And I'm going to take about 6 inches of half round wire. Since it's short, I'm just going to use my fingers and get the warps and twists out, and then make a little hook about 1/2 inch at the end with the flat side to the inside. So I'll pick my band of wires up and I'll hold on to them in the middle here. Just maybe about a little bit off the middle, but not too far. You're going to make 2 little bands here. So, you know, just about 1/2 inch off the center. And I'll hook, we can slide it anyway. I'm going to hook my little half round over. I'll hang on to that little bit. And I'm just going to make 5 over and underhanded wraps. And I'll make my wraps tight enough that they don't have any loop, you know, that they touch the frame wire on both ends, but not so tight that they crush my 3 frame wires in. So I'll just make 5 of these guys, keeping my half round with the flat side against the frame. And then I'll use my plier, and I'll pull out and then pull straight. And that straightens that first one out. So I got 5, and I'll just do a nice little solid tap and land them nice and flat on my frame. You don't need to crush them, just a nice little tap. Now turn it over, lift that little one, but not, and just lift that little one and take a snip. And you want to leave enough wire that the cut lives about halfway through this bundle. You see that? Not too short and not too long. It'll stay there. And now this one too. You'll lift it slightly. And get your plier underneath there. And take a nice clean snip. Save that half round. I'm about to use it again. And then lay that wire down. So just like that. 5 nice neat ones. So take that same piece of half round, straighten it out if it's not too munched up. If it's too munched up, just cut another 4-inch piece or so. Give yourself another 1/2 inch bend. Hook the bunch of wires. Keep the cut side. Now this is the back. So hook, look at the front of it and hook the half round and make 5 more. So all your half round will go in this same direction. This is now the back side of the wire, or the inside, as you'll see in a second once we come around the stone. So I've made 5 wraps, and I'm just going to take my plier. This time I got my nylon jaw. I'll straighten the first and the last wrap out if I need to, and I did a little bit. And I'll flip it over here. And see, the whole time my frame isn't bent, I'm not crunching it, it's nice and straight as I work. And I'll lift these up and just snip these out. Take my metal plier, tap those 2 cuts right down. Okay. All right. Now these 2 wraps are about in the middle of my wire here, if you can see my band of wires, my frame wires. And this is going to be, the point's going to be the top of my stone. But I want to make a cute little point down here at the bottom of my stone too. So these bands are about 2 millimeters apart. And I'm going to take my flat nose pliers. You You could also use your chain link. And I'm going to hold one of these bands, just going to be a little bit over the band, right there at the flat of my plier. And then I'm just going to take and turn this entire band, keeping it all straight, a little beyond 90 degrees, but not too much, so that bare part's right at the bend. If any of your, cuts tip out, just tap them down. See how that is? Okay. So both my tape tabs are going this way, so they don't get in my way. Now when I set my stone, I should have about 1/4 of an inch down there between the stone and the bottom. Once we line it all up here on our dots, you can see how that's going to go. About 1/4 of an inch. Okay? I'm going to put some tape at the bottom of this stone, and I'm actually going to work this sideways because to work it this way, my hands are going to be in front of this camera. You won't see anything. Ideally, you should work this maybe this way so that you can have your strong hand over here, and you should be standing up so that you're straight over this thing. If you try to come at it at an angle, sometimes if you're not on a grid, you won't get a total straight up and down frame. Okay, so that this guy doesn't slide while I'm trying to bend a wire around him, I'm going to take a piece of tape, just a little one, and I'm going to turn it inside out, make a little inside out tube, and stick it to the bottom of my rock. Make sure the tape's not protruding from the rock at all. And then I'm going to stick my rock down on my grid here so that I'm evenly spaced. This rock is fairly symmetrical, so it's easy to stay, between my dots and the line. Try to move my camera so that you can see it a little bit. So now with everything in place, I'm going to make sure that my point is on this line, which is centered to my stone and centered to my tip. I'm going to hold everything, including the wire, because as I bend, it's going to want to do this and move out. So keep that tip on your center line. And that's, usually my finger there, my finger on top of the rock, my thumb over here to brace the wire I am not moving. And that way, when I bend this one, this stack, this one won't want to do this, you see? So once again, make sure your center here and your wire's up against your stone. We put our finger on top of our stone and our thumb here to brace, kind of counter push this half of the wire. And now take a bend all the way around your stone and just let the side of your stone shape that wire. You kind of have to overbend it slightly, but not too much. See? Okay? And right here, where the wire, where your center line is, we're going to turn this wire up again. If you can do it with your fingers and keep your stack of wires standing like this, don't let them crush in. Here's where, pliers are good. You could also use your bent nose pliers. I usually just come above all of them right here. Make sure that your bent nose are straight up and down, and just let them help you bend that wire out slightly. Okay, just like that right there. Or you can use flats, just like that. You don't need to be right on that tip. Don't worry about it if you're slightly above it. And see, I actually moved all out of alignment there. Not really too much though. Okay, so now again, hold everything steady, all the wire. Move this side over and around your stone. And then once you cross it, just bend the top back up. use your pliers. And this is, you can use your fingers slightly also. Okay, so these wires should meet at the top. Nice and neat and side by side like that. Okay, and your frame should sit nicely around your stone like that. You can make small adjustments with your fingers if you need to. Okay, and now I'm going to wrap this neck up. You could have also done this in 20 gauge wire. 18's a little tough to move all three of them together. So you could also be doing this in 20 gauge wire, in which case you might have 4 of these bands here to cover the depth of your stone. I'm using 18 gauge, so 3 of them pretty much catch my sides pretty well. Okay, but the substitute could be 4 20 gauge square wires, 12 inches each to get around this. And while 12 inches seems like a lot, it's not, because your bale is going to be here, and then the rest of this is design and whatever else you want to do. If I wasn't going to do design, I wouldn't need very much. I'd probably have, probably used about 9 inches of wire. Alright, so now with my frame shaped, they should be nice and even up along the sides of your stone. I'm going to take about 14 inches of half round wire. I'm going to bend forward 2 inches with the flat side on the inside. So I have a long 2-inch leading tail. I'm going to hold my frame so that the neck is together and all 6 wires are neatly side by side. Then I'm going to hook the neck, and they're, evenly together this way as well as this way. I'm going to hook the neck with the short side, and I'm going to wrap the short end of the half round moving towards the frame. I'm going to make about 5 nice tight little wraps. Do one more. And then I'm going to cut this wire off. It doesn't need to be super tight, but it can be fairly tight, snug. Just cut the half round off right there. Make sure that the first loop is nice and even, and then slide everything all the way down the neck until you're at the base of it. And then use your pliers and tap those snug just like that. Okay. Alright, so now I can separate these two. And this tape has barely any sticky on it, so it should just come straight off my wire. Now before we do any fancy bends, while our wires are still straight and can move, we can lock our stone into this little frame. So I'm going to position my stone back here like this to show you. I always like to start with the back side to make sure that you got your nerves shaken out, and to give your stone a little seat so you have some opportunity for thought for the front. But you can hold your stone in place, or you can do this outside, with the stone out. So you can use your flat nose. That's what flat nose are great for. And just grip, so this is the back of my frame. Just grip the very last square wire right there at the edge of the wraps. Don't get the middle wire, just the last one. Put your finger right here and, hold this curve. And then bend the plier, just by twisting your hand, don't pull, don't push, just twist your hand down and inside to make this little bend, so it creates this nice little seat for your cabochon. Try to show this side a little bit more. So I'm going to keep my thumb in here. I'm trying to do this upside down so you can see it. I'll keep my finger in here, and then I'm just going to grip this last wire right here above the wraps. I'm going to keep my finger in here, and I'm not going to force anything, but I'm just going to help hold this little curve. And I'm going to turn my plier, this side of my plier, to the inside of the frame. Okay, try to make it a little bit even with the other side. And it gives you a nice back. Okay, you see how the wires fanned out a little bit as you moved these two? It gave you some room so that these don't buckle. Alright, to get all this back together, just need to give a little tap there at the neck. Okay, now my stone has a nice little seat to it. Okay, I could have used, this stone's pretty deep, so I probably could have used 4 wires here, but these are 18 gauge, so they're pretty big. I can expand these. You don't want to do that giving pressure to your stone. Okay, you don't want to just push your stone back. Some stones are soft and that might not be good for them. So you can pop it out. If you need a little bit more depth to the wires back here, and this is why we work with them when they're still straight, so they can give you, length. You can take your pliers and just pull these wires out slightly, okay, and away from the frame. So take it right here and just pull it out slightly and away from the frame. And then do the same to the other side. Put your bent nose right on the corner and just pull it out just like that to be even with the other side. Okay? And then you can wiggle your plier underneath here and do the same. Just give yourself a little bend. And pull the wire out slightly. It'll be easier for me to show you from this side. Ideally, you want to be beneath, this. So take it with your bent nose here and just do this little pull. Okay. So you've made now like a little basket. And now when I slip my stone back in there, it's a much nicer fit. I can level all this out just with my fingers here and push these wires back up now to level them back out to the back of my stone, making sure that the wires on the sides are riding nice and even along the sides. Okay, just like that. Little bump there, so I'll just push there. A little push there. Okay, nicely done. That looks good. Now also, if I needed to, I could use my fingers and snuggle the wires up to the sides as well. So our half round is still floating out around here. We haven't made any bends here because we're able to do all of that. And while I've got the wire straight, I'm going to go ahead and also pull a wire to the front of the stone. I can do that in the same way. going to just use my fingernail so I don't scratch anything and separate, make a little separation right there between the two side wires. And then you can either use your bent nose or you can use your flat nose. I like to hold my thumb up here to kind of protect, you know, the wire up here. You'll end up having the opportunity to push it back. And you can either measure, you know, if you want to, kind of just eyeball 3 or 4 millimeter right there. And I'm going to hold my wire here, and I'm just going to turn my plier in. See? Put a little nick in it. This is kind of why I like to do it this way, but it's hard for me to show you that. And just turn the wire in so that it rides just along, it grabs just that soft shoulder of your stone. See it? Just right on top. I'm always about showing off as much stone as possible, so I try not to cover it too much. You can always push it up more if you need to. And then do the same to this side. Get your bent nose right here on it. Kind of eyeball the same amount as the other side. Put your thumb on the rest of that wire so it doesn't move too much. And just do a upward turn on the tips of your pliers. Okay? And it pushes that wire and makes this little turn up the side of the stone. Nicely done. So we've fully captured our stone in this 18 gauge. I don't need a lot of wire over it because the 18 gauge is real big. So, you know, I can bump this wire and not worry about it shifting too much. That's why I like to use the 18 gauge. And now I'm just going to straighten the neck out here. I'm going to make sure to settle all these bands. Make sure if they moved. If I need to push, you know, this upper wire more on, just gently use your fingernail and do that. Or likewise, push it off the stone a little bit. Never pull, because you could slip and then bend that whole situation, bend that whole wire. So just slightly like that to raise it a little bit if you need to. And always look down to make sure they're nice and even. Good. All right, so now let's get back to the top. I'm going to take the two front wires. There's many ways you can do this, but I'm going to take the two front wires, make them my bail, and bend them to the back. So I'm going to separate them from this pack by just identifying the two very most front wires and pulling them forward slightly here. Just stick your finger in there and bend them forward right here at the neck. Just like that, about 90 degrees. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're going to wrap them. One of mine is starting to twist, and you know, it doesn't bother me too much because I'm going to wrap them. But if it bothers you, you can see this one is twisting inward. So I can take my bent nose and right here, not up here, but right here where they're wrapped, right here at the joint, right above the bend, grab them squarely and then turn them back to square. Turn the one back to square. Okay, you see how that happened? So hopefully you can see that. So if your square wire starts to turn on you, just get boss of it right away. Okay, so now I'm going to wrap, I'm going to make sure that this last loop is tight on my half round. Make sure that the flat side is still up against the frame. And I'm going to get the first 1 or 2 wraps right into that crevice. A little bit hard in there, but once you get past a few wraps, it'll get real easy. So just make 3 or 4 little quick wraps there at the neck. Make sure to keep your half round as neat as possible. If you need to push these wires back, you just hold them and slant them slightly all together so that you can get at this wrap a little bit better. So this will become the bail. I like to wrap till about 1.25 inches. You know, gives me a nice long slender neck. About 1/2 inch bail is what that will make if you wrap for about 1.25 inches. And that'll give you about a 5mm or 4mm inside diameter to your bail, which is good for chain or beads, you know, small beads, leather rope. So you can do this overhand and underhand till you get about 1.25 inches. Alright, so I'm almost done. I've got about 4 or 5 more wraps here. About, you know, every 4 to 5 wraps, you just want to go ahead and tap your half round down. And when you're done, you should have about a couple of inches here at the end. Leave yourself a couple of inches there. Okay, so just like that. And now I'm going to get these design wires out of my way. There's many ways to part these depending on what kind of design you want to do here at the top. So for us, we're going to part just 2 to the left and 2 to the right. So I have 4 of them basically sitting 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. So I'm going to take the 2 on the right, kind of separate them and pull them off to the right hand side. And I'm just pulling them down horizontal. I'm not bending them, you know, back or forward, just straight down into horizontal. And I'm going to do the same with the other side. Do it like this so you can see it a little better. So they're both at horizontal. And my bail is in the middle of them. Okay? So with my bail now, I'm going to return it to straight. So this is what you got. And with my finger or with a dowel, bend the center of these wraps into a nice little bail loop. And you want to bring the ends, you know, down to meet the end of this one. You know, the neck wrap, the end of it. So I'm just going to use my hands. Get about as close as you can. There, I can just meet the top of these wraps. So you'll just make the wraps meet right here at the top of the neck wrap. Okay? And you can use your finger and pinch it in right there and get it a little closer. Try to stay in the center. I'm in the camera, so it's a little difficult for me to see. So you see how I pinched it in to get it a little closer. And now stand these up just slightly. Get them out of your way. With this couple of inches, make a couple of wraps now all the way around this neck. Just like that. Keep them neat and one underneath the other. We're going to cover them up, but if you weren't, you want to make those wraps, you know, neat. And then with these 2 back wires now, we're in the back. I've made 2 wraps around the neck. I'm just going to lift these wires off the back slightly so I can get underneath them. And I'm going to take the last inch of my half round. I'm just going to turn it a couple of times around there. I'll cut it off and then tuck the end. Whoop, got a piece of tape. Cut it right there, leaving a couple of millimeter that you can turn down and tuck in that space underneath all these 2 wires here. Then when you lay these 2 back down, the back, that cut will live on the inside there. Won't be anywhere to be felt. Okay, great job. So look at the front now and make sure that you're upright on your bale. Sometimes we list, they shift a little bit while we're working them. Just always keeping yourself in line. It's beautiful. And now the rest of it is design, okay? This is a beautiful wrap, beautiful stone, just plain as it is. I might do a little jiggle of something right there to cover that neck, but otherwise, I could snip these off, turn them under and call it a day, trim these as well, and I'll show you that in another variation. But for now, let's do a little bit of design work. I have all of these wires available to me for design. I have the two in the back. I can bring them up to here or I can use them down here depending on how I want. And I have two wires up here to either side. So for, maybe we'll do something curly. This is a nice plain stone, and some of us, you guys expressed to me that you like curly. So let's start with curly. So I'm going to take this first front wire, okay, and I'm just going to bring it to the front here a little bit and turn it to the front so it's 90 degrees. I'll use my finger. I'm going to make a low, tight curl down here and then another one right above it. 2 loops with this guy. So I'm going to use the pad of my finger and I'm going to push it into the neck and create a curve. That's beautiful. I could also just slope down, but I'll do that with the next one. And I'm going to take this curve and hold it right here and turn the wire all the way up and around itself. And I'm turning it so that it isn't twisting. I'm not just willy-nilly. I'm trying to keep a nice, it doesn't have to stay, perfectly square to you. But if you can keep it square, it looks nice. So I just looped it all the way over itself. Okay, treat it like, flowy ribbon that you want to keep kind of facing in a certain direction. So I created this beautiful little loop. If I want to tighten that loop up, I can use my round nose plier. Grab it here at the end and the back and just turn it and let, the wire flow up. So that made that a little tighter. It's pretty good. Okay, so before I bring this one down, I could bring this one up because it's going to collide, So if I wanted to bring it, inside and under that one, I would leave this one up until I deal with this one. So I'll do that. I'm going to create another little loop up here, bringing it forward. And it'll just be a little bit taller than my other one. I'll use this thumb, once I get it nice and curved, to help me push it back a little bit, just like that. And then I can snuggle it under there, you see? It's a beautiful design so far. If I wanted to whip another one, instead of, going in the opposite direction, I can take this one from the back and bring it around the back to go another one. Have a third one on this side. And I'll do that just to show you that technique, because I know you've seen me, do both sides, kind of mirror to this one in other pendants. So let's just take this back wire. Let's say we want to shift it to the other side and use it over there. So I'm just going to hold everything steady, make a nice neat turn around my bale here, and I want to flip it over this guy. Be careful to leave yourself enough room for your chain to go through. So I'm going to bring this wire all the way forward here. I think I'm going to use my plier to make that a little tighter. I'll just hold it right there and make it a little tighter bend to my bale here. Did you see that? And now I don't have to go too far up my bale. That's still plenty of room for a chain. And I can swing it more to this side. See, and just kind of echo this guy. That's beautiful. I can actually, if I want to give it more curve, you pull them out more and give yourself more curve. Did you see that? Settle it back. Okay. Get these two wires beautifully together here. Give some elegance. If I want to make another loop right here, I could, or I could actually loop into the opposite direction. You got to think about which direction you want to loop because it'll direct your wire. So if I wanted the rest of this wire to come back down this side, I would loop this way so that my wire would come back this way. But if I wanted to come down this side of the pendant, then my loop has to go to this side of the pendant so the extension of wire comes this way. I hope that makes sense. I'm going to try to show that to you. So I'm going to pull this forward. I'm going to give it a little bit more right there. Okay, a little bit more. And I'm going to hold it right here because I'm going to do an opposite curl. So I'm going to hold my wire right there. I'm going to make sure that nothing is moving above my thumb. And I'm going to start a long S curve, not too long, because there's girth in the wire. So as it curves, you know, it needs to have space to come back on itself. So if you go super tight, then your loop ends up way up here. So you start way down here and let it come back up. I'm trying to show you in the camera, otherwise I'm trying to hold this curve in place while I do this and still be in the camera for you and not have my hands over this loop. So you have to kind of hold it right here so you have leverage. I don't like to take my plier right here because you could gouge out the top of your stone, right? So just keep working this over. There it goes. And now I'm going to hold the bottom of this so that when I turn, my loop kind of stays living right there. I'll get a plier on it now to help me. So I want to make this a small loop and I want to eventually make it live right there. So I'm going to take it here at the bend because as I curl, it's going to curl up. If I take it here, I'm going to be over myself. I hope that all makes sense. So right here, okay, here's the curve. I hope we can do this into the camera. If you think you might gouge your stone, you see I'm not actually on the stone. Put your thumb underneath there. Just let your plier help you turn it into a tight little curl like that, you see? So now my wire's coming off of this side. That's cute. Whew, I hope you can see that. Now if I want to slope back down my stone, I've got this wicked curve going on this way. So if I bend it down, it's going to be weird there, right? It's not going to be graceful. So I can do this by, you know, kind of holding onto my loop, but not making any abrupt moves, just kind of letting my wire come back down, or I can come back around one more time, and that would actually be a smoother move. So I'm up here. I'm turning upside down to make it easier for me. And I'm going to hold that loop, and I'm going to just not pull on the wire because you don't have a whole lot of length, but I'm trying to turn a tight loop, and I'm trying to do it under the camera. I know it looks like I'm fidgeting a lot, but I want you to see it. So it's like a double. And now I have less curve in the extended wire. So now when I bring it down here, I can get more graceful motion back into the other direction. And that's super cute. you know, I want to check my end here if I need to clip it or anything. I'm just going to make, you know, a little turn back into the body here. So I'm going to get my round nose plier on it. You know, my square is kind of going this way to face me, so I'm going to actually make sure that I'm turning it here on its side, which keeps the front square. Take the tip. I'm going to hold my little curly stuff I just did. I'm going to get a nice graceful bend. Oh, my nails look terrible. I'm sorry. Just noticing myself. My wire's dirty. So you see that cute little curl we put there on this? Push it out a little bit more. Push your loop in while you're pushing this a little bit out. And that's cute. And we'll make that live there on the body. Okay? We can trim it, you know, and not have it do all that later if we choose to. So now I have this wire on this side. Let me go ahead and I want to bring it down the left-hand side here, so I'm going to give it a back bend so that I have, you know, some leverage. See how I've made a curve there? Start bending the loop there. And then use your thumb and push it back. There. So it snuggles kind of right into that spot. Kind of a little Dr. Seuss-ish. Yeah. Cute. You know, if I wanted to hammer that, I could be ridiculous and try to pull it out, but I'm not going to. We're just not going to hammer in this one. And so this guy now, I'm holding here at the neck, I can bend down the side of my stone and to the back if I want to give a nice little look there. Flare it out a little bit. I don't know if I like it. If I don't like it, if you don't like it, then you carefully straighten your wire back out, right? Slope it a little bit more. I don't like that, you know, the bubble at the top. I like it to kind of flare out down here. Yeah, I like that a little better. I still think I'm going to bring it around to the back. So I'm using the pad of my finger here, bring it around to the back, just give myself a little flare right there. Now that I might want to hammer. For some texture, I might want to hammer this guy too. So before I do anything further, I'm going to go ahead and just pull him out, not change anything, just pull him out right there at the bend so I can reach it. Pull my bench block out. And find my hammer. Here's my hammer. I'm just going to hammer that curve. And taper the wire a little bit. So I've got that. Now when I bring it to the back, I've got a nice little hammered section there, and that looks good. Okay. Just going to snuggle this down a little bit. All right. That looks pretty good so far. So here at the back, I still got these 2 design wires I can do something with, but I'm going to make sure my little curved section stays where I can see it. I'm just going to use these 2 back wires really quick to help me. Yeah, I like that. This side, all I'm going to do right here is take a bend with my plier. I'm just going to eyeball it. I want it to sit about like that, so I'm just going to bend it down. Just like that. So you can see how that's coming down the side. Alright, so I'll just leave that one there for a second and deal with these over here. I'm going to do this inside one first. I'm going to go ahead and curve it, slope it down my stone, kind of do the same as the other side, bend it and get it around to the back. I'm just going to use the pad of my finger to help me. You make it look as even as you want to or not. To this side, I'm going to hammer this out. I like that. So I'll pull it out where I can get at it. Just hammering that curve right there. Now I'm going to push it back down onto my stone, slip that wire to the back. See, if I had tied all this business down, then I, would have to be bending my wire to get in and out of things. So right now, I can just, slip things to the back. I actually like the way that looks quite a bit. So I'm going to eyeball it, hold the wire where I want it, and from the back with my bent nose, right about here underneath the tip of my pendant, I'm going to do the same, just whoop, bend the wire so that it goes straight back down. And they don't have to be perfect. You just want to make sure that your pretty hammering is seen, that you don't make it so tight that you bury these hammered areas, you pull them too far to the back. So, I nicked that guy a little bit. It might break. So when I have these 2 wires back together, in the back, you can see that I can see my pretty little hammered sections. Okay, great. And I can make any little adjustments right there because I gave myself space enough to do that. All right, so before I go further, just leave those kind of hanging back there and in order. I'm going to go ahead and deal with this guy in the front. I'm going to pull it out 90 degrees. Nice spring in the coil there, the spiral that we made. And I'll just put a nice snip on that to slant it. Pull it out here where I can hammer it. Be careful not to ruin your design. So I gave it some hammering. I pulled it out a little bit. Remember, it comes from this one, so put it back right in between there, right? But I'm going to clean it first. You could also sand that. Could probably do it better than that. And then when you want to lay it back down, it's going to want to spring back up on you. So what you have to do is raise, underneath it while pushing this down. So I'm going to hold that little spiral head down, this, on my stone where I want them. And I'm going to use my pliers, make sure everything's landed back where it's supposed to be. I'm going to use my pliers. I'm just going to slightly squeeze on this coil right here. You don't want to give yourself any little dents or anything, but just kind of, settle it back down together. We're probably going to have to tie a little bit, we're going to probably have to tie it down to make sure it doesn't shift. But for now, that's kind of how we get it sloping back down. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So I've got the 2 hammered wires here. Can tie those 2 together. Gotta settle this pendant a little bit. Just put it down on your mat and settle the wires so that everything's flat again. It's feeding time here in my house, if you can hear my dogs in the background. Alright, then I have this last wire that's still way up here I could do something with. If I want to slope it down, I'm going to hold this loop and I'm going to start to slowly take this curve out. No sudden moves, but just soften the curve up. I'll use my so I've got it sloping down, going down again, rather than a sharp curve up. And I'll just use the pad of my finger here to help bend it and shape it while I'm turning it underneath the stone. I'm gonna just make sure that that's nice and flush. I'm going to bring it around to the very, very back side behind all these wires. Just like that, because I don't need it. Okay, so now let's start to talk about getting rid of some of these in the back. Okay, so to continue, to looking at the back of my pendant so you can see where all these wires are. I've got the 2 hammered wires coming from the front to the back that have been straightened down the back of my pendant here. Right above them, I have the one with the curl, and then the 2 back wires. I lifted those just a little bit so you could see how they lay. So now I can easily deal with all of these wires and tie them off, or do more design, whichever your preference is. I'm going to lift these 2 slightly out of my way so I can deal with everything else down here. And I'm going to lift that one slightly out of my way too. So for these 2, I'll tie them together first. And I'm going to use just a couple of inches of half round right here. I've got the flat side against these 2 wires. I'm just going to make 3 quick little wraps right here, and then slide that whole thing down to the frame or to the base of those wires. Okay? Just do a couple more wraps with this one. So I did about maybe 5 total wraps. I changed my mind. I'm going to flip them forward and do a little design right here in the front. So I wrapped them about 5 times, maybe 6. Changing my mind on the fly. And then I'm bringing the cut around to the front because I'm going to flip these 2 up. So this time I'm going to cut the wire off and leave the cut right there. And I'm going to do the same with this side. Just going to pull that wire forward, cut that tip off, and just tap my flat, my half round down right there. Okay, you'll see why that happens in a minute. So we're going to turn this wire up so our cuts will be on the inside. And holding my hammered, see this little section in the middle is still flexible. We can move it from side to side. So we're going to hold these hammered pieces, you know, to each side where we want them. Just adjust your stone a little bit. They should be centered to the bottom here. And then right here with my round nose, right above my wraps, just going to take my pliers and turn them up and push them forward, just like that, onto the belly of my stone, just like that. Just going to give a little tap there. So they're turned up just like that. If I want to end these wires right here, then I can pull them out and push them back through this bottom section and just, you know, tie them off down here. But rather, I'm going to show you, you know, we'll just do a quick little design. So after I turn them up, I'm just going to give them a slight tap to tighten them up slightly. Don't over push there. Okay. Then I'll hold them here at their edge. And just with my fingers, oops, I can take these wires, turn them out. Let me hold this so you can see it. Just turn them out slightly like this. I'm holding pretty firm here. I'm trying to do this under the camera, so I'm at an odd angle, but it should be easier for you. So there's that. I can turn them out like that. If I had wanted to put a little stone down there, a tiny little one, I could have done that, and these two, could have used these two to help brace it in. So it's something that you can try. If I had dropped a stone in there, I would have just pushed these down a little bit further to help lock it in. You see, makes like a little area there that you can do that. And so now with these two, I'm going to hold them here. I've got them fanned out to parallel, and I'm just going to take the end of it, and I'm just going to turn it up and to the back. Hold these two together. You can do the same to this side. Just turn it to the back. Take the tip and make a nice turn. Come from underneath. Get it just like that. So these two wires are just coming to the back here. And I can lock them down by just turning them right into that little space between the frame and the stone. You don't need to make the turn drastic, just enough to hook it. Just like that. Now I'll do this side. Just want to make sure they're fairly even. They don't have to be perfectly even. I'm just turning it down into that small space to lock it into place. And those are pretty cute. And then I can fiddle up here as I choose. If I need to do anything more, if I feel like they're in the right place, just come and tighten these up slightly to make sure they don't go anywhere and that nothing will adjust. Turn that slightly. Just like that. Make sure you can't see those ends from the front, and we can't. That's great. So this one, since I don't need it anywhere and I don't want it anywhere, I'm just going to probably terminate it back here. You never want to put anything where, you know, it might be unsightly. So I think what I'll do is turn it up. So I'm going to pinch it back, hold it right there. Take the end of it, pass it through the bottom of my frame here. Don't pull, just guide the wire through. Okay. All I want to see is just this little bit, so I'm going to pull it through enough to tighten it. I'm going to make sure the wire in the back is down. And I'm just going to tie it into that little space right down there. I still have these two wires back here that I can do something with if I want to. And I'm just going to loop this little wrapped area down here. Trim my wire and then direct the end of it right into that space. Okay. So I've got, make some little adjustments there. I might tie a little ball right there to tie those together. Okay, so that's looking pretty cute. Then I've got these two back wires right here remaining if I need them. I feel like I want something a little bit more down here. So I think what I'm going to do is flip them up and just cover this little space. So since I don't need them fanned out, I'm going to bring them back together and just spread them out down here. Make kind of like a little A shape. So they're just either side of my lower tip. I'm going to take this one, making sure the wires are nice and flat back here. And I'm just going to turn it into that little space, a cute little curl. Get my plier on it. Pinch it down slightly. Same for this side. They're not tied to anything so they can shift, so just double check that they're good in the back, or you could take the time and tie them together. Just make a little flip. Use your plier and pinch that down slightly. It's pretty cute. And then I don't want to bring any more design up, so I think I'm just going to fold them over also and tie them where the other two go. So you want to hold them right here so they don't spread apart. Or you could, you know, tie them right here and tie them right here first if you feel like you need to. Actually, let's just do that. We'll get, I'll go ahead and create the design. Get about another 7 inches a half round and just cut it in half. So you're working with about 3.5 inches. Before we get rid of these ends, And which, by the way, you could turn them up and hammer them. You could do all kinds of stuff. Slip your half round in between those two wires right there. Hold the front end of your half round. The flat side is touching the frame wires. And just take this end and do a couple of loops around these two wires right here. Tie them together. Let's make 3. And the last one, I wrapped 2. The last one, I'm actually going to grab all 3 frame wires. So, including the one that's right there next to the body, you see it? So I tie this stack all to this wire as well on the frame, this one. See how it's grabbed that wire there? And then loop one more time. Let's make 4. Well, now we'll have to make 5 actually, because I gotta make odd numbers. So there goes 4. And I'll tuck 5. And then I'm going to push this back. I want to cut this wire underneath here so that the cut lives there. So rather than cutting it on top, I made my final loop, pushed it back slightly. Just going to eyeball where my cut needs to be. It's already turned down, so now I'm just going to replace the wire back. Just tuck it. Okay? So that looks pretty good. I'm going to get rid of the front of the half round, just right here. I'm not going to fold it over. I'm just going to cut it inside. And then tuck it up where you can't see it. Okay? Now I'll tie up this side. Take the other half of my half round, about 3 inches. I'll give myself a little tail to hold on to here. And with the long side, I'll make 2 wraps around these 2 frame wires that I have on design. Okay, and then with wraps number 3, I'm going to catch that additional frame wire here. See how I've got it right there? And now I'll make 2 more wraps. To give 5. Put my 5th one in there. And then I'm going to push the 5th one back out so that I can cut it way down there. And then push it back in. Just like that. Get rid of this front one here by cutting them to the inside. Tucking the wire up. It's cute. And now with these, I'm just going to follow the line and bend them to the back. Maybe a little lower so I have this cute little thing there. I'm just going to hook them right around this wire. So I'll cut this short. Take this and bring it a little closer. then just turn this little end down. Make sure it hooks. You can't just leave it turned down. So make a nice hooking bend, and then get on top of it. Try to squeeze it just a little more. Okay, so it's a 90-degree down and under. And that leaves that cute bit here in the front. Nice and tight. We do this one the same way. Just take it and make a turn all the way to the back here. Before I lock it in, I always like to take a look to the front to see if I need to adjust it. Curl it down a little bit more. There it is. And then take this one. If I can't reach this wire, I can always bend the wire out slightly. Doesn't change anything in the front. I don't want to hook it around this frame wire because then you'll see it down there. So I'll just slide one of these back wires over a little bit. Make it cute. I cut that a little bit short. Leave yourself enough room in the wire to make this bend, unlike me. You're always handling these tough pushes from the back so that we're not marring up the front. And that's enough. You see I've got it turned under, got a nice locking bend on it. I might do just a smidge more. There. Okay. That looks pretty good in the back. Make sure it looks cute in the front. Make sure they're about evenly spaced. You can make some small adjustment bends. Then once you get it where you want it, make sure that you squeeze this down even more so that it locks down. And then same on this side. Just make sure that all your ends are really locked in, and I brought the tip of that right to the wire so it doesn't protrude, you see. Just looks like it belongs there. Okay, almost done. Good job, you guys. Make a little adjustment here. Squeeze these two in a little bit so that down here can flare out slightly. Okay, well, that looks pretty good. Looks even. Very pretty. Now just this one. We got to tie this guy down because we can't leave him like that. So I can bring him way over here and, you know, make a big stretch to this lower wire if I wanted to, and tie him there, right here. Kind of push him off the pendant more. Or I can tie him to this side wire and leave more of this curl on top of my stone. Since my stone's not, you know, hugely patterned, even though it's a beautiful color, I'm going to go ahead and tie him off probably to this inside wire so that the curl lives on the body of my stone a little bit more. So I'm going to do that with some half round. I need a slight bit of space here in order to get the half round through. So I'm just going to make sure that there's the slightest air pocket. And if not, I think I can slip through down there. You always got to make sure you got a place that you can slip that wire through. So there's room right there I can slip through and underneath, and then pull this up a little bit to tie right there. Okay. So I'll get about 3 inches of half round. And I'm going to go with the flat side up, and I'm going to slip it, here's the hard part, underneath this wire, this frame wire. It's tight, so just work it with control. And now I'm gonna, you see that little air pocket? I need that there. So I raised this wire slightly, just like that. So I can get a couple of wraps. And I can use this wire to help me pull the frame wire up slightly. Not too much, don't want to lose control. That'll give me a little space. See how I can use the frame wire and just pull up slightly. Give myself a little bit of space to get underneath there. See, that pocket is airspace. You can lay it all back down again after you get a couple of wraps. So I made 3 wraps. And I'm going to cut this off on the inside here with about 2 millimeter to work with. I use my bent nose and turn that tip down so when I tap on top, it slides right underneath there. And I'll tap that. And then I'll take this one around one more time. I usually go 5 or 3, but I'll do 4. And I'm going to cut it off over here, giving myself a couple of millimeter so that I can turn that tip down and press from the top to get it to slip underneath. And that's it, you guys. What a beautiful little pendant. I hope you've enjoyed this. Certainly I'd go through and make sure that, you know, nothing is poking anything, that everything is stable. You might flare these out slightly more if you wanted to. Handle them from the back so that you don't get any munchies on the front. I like to pull them way out and then bring them back a little bit. So there they go. And then just push them back slightly. So it gives a little extra flair, but it isn't, you know, so much. Go through and examine your beautiful pendant, make adjustments, see if you want to add anything. Make sure that you got room for a chain. I'm going to tie a little ball right there and probably call that it for this video. So this is a pretty traditional wrap, this is pretty traditional frame style. But you can see that using some of our newer hammered techniques, we can still use a traditional frame and apply all of these groovy hammering and layering techniques that we've been learning, even still, to this frame. So I show you this frame because every wire wrapper needs to know it. It's the basic 101 frame, the bezel frame. And you know, with it you can go 1,000 miles and do 1,000 things. You can also make this a very unisex wrap. If we didn't add all of this and just, you know, clipped all the wires at the top like when we first began and just folded them down or back, this could also be a very masculine wrap. So it's a good one to know. I'm going to do a few more for you for November and show you what else you can do with this frame. I have these cute little football shape beads, and I think I'm going to tie one. Oh, maybe not. Got the wrong one out. This is the football shape bead. And I think I'm going to tie it maybe right there, if it fits. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll go for a bigger one, just to make it easy. I'll just go for a big copper round one, and I'll show you how to tie these off into the back. So when I don't want to add any more wire to the front, but I want to add the ball right there, I can pass the wires off to the back. I'll show you how to do that. You can use your half round, or you can use 28 or 26 gauge round. I'm going to use my half round because that's what I've been using for this whole thing. And I'm taking about 4 inches of it. And I'm going to just pass it through my ball bead and center it. Then I'm going to bend it into a pin with the flat side on the inside. And I'm going to bring the sides very close to the holes. It's going to jiggle for a minute till you get it tied in. But then you see I have 2 wires there, 2 frame wires that are crossing the very center. I'm just going to grab those 2. So I'm going to pass, they're convenient. I'm going to pass these 2 little wires to the back, push that ball in there. I'll crisscross them over some frame wire back here and make sure that they're tight so that there's no slack at my bead. Nice and clean. And now I'm just going to tie these to the back here, make a few wraps around some convenient frame wires. There's one right here. You just want to make sure that you get all the slack out of the half round so that your ball bead lays nice and tight against the frame and not bobbling around because you had slack in the wire. Okay, so just a couple of wraps. Trim that off. I'm going to make sure my ball is tight into that space. Make sure the slack is out of that half round. And I'm going to wrap it conveniently to, that's too big of a stretch. Well, maybe not. I'm just going to wrap it conveniently to this little wire back here. A couple of times. And then turn that down. Tuck it to the inside underneath that space. Okay, nice and clean in the back. Nice and flush and cute little ball in the front. Alright, I think I like that a lot. I'm showing you a very deep frame also, so that when we get into some deeper stones or faceted stones that have a deep back, I'm going to show you how to turn this frame wider so that we can accommodate those types of wraps. So I hope you like it. Punch the like button, leave me some comments, let me know something, and I'll see you for the next one. Thanks.